So welcome everyone. Thank you for dialing into this virtual roundtable where we will discuss how and where artificial intelligence is likely to change the downstream industry in the next 5 years. So my name is Norbert Dolle. I'm joined by a panel of real industry experts who will introduce themselves in a minute. Just very briefly about myself, I'm a co-founder and managing partner of Whitespace Solutions. We're a 2019 startup delivering custom-built AI solutions for improving planning decisions. And in the context of downstream, that mainly means improving maintenance and logistics decisions. I'm, of course, very honored to moderate this roundtable. Having said that, I'm also very disappointed that this again is a virtual event. I'm a huge fan of chicken rice, and I really look forward to having some real good food in Singapore, but that will have to wait till next time. Before I ask my esteemed panelists to introduce themselves, let me give a short introduction of what we're going to talk about in the next 40 minutes and a bit of context. So we've seen some real exciting examples of digitalization across the downstream sector. Yet we also know that there's been a hype around AI and digital transformation for the last 5 years or so at a minimum. So the question really is about, is this it? What is more to come? And what are those key blockers and enablers that really allow us to transform the industry? Secondly, we've got some global players in this panel. And it'll be interesting to discuss what the Asian region can learn from what happens globally. So are there certain best practices that we can take into account? Are there certain things in Asia that the rest of the world can learn from? And finally, there's one topic that is probably being discussed even more than digitalization in boardrooms around the globe at the moment, which is sustainability, climate change, energy transition. So we're going to talk about how can digitalization help with sustainability and energy transition, bring these two topics really together and have a good conversation about that. So let us get to know the panelists. In no particular order. Johan, would you like to start introducing yourself?
Sure, Norbert. Hi everyone. My name is Johan Jainuddin and I'm from Malaysia. I'm with the Heng Yuan Refining Company. So we are a refinery down south of Kuala Lumpur. So I've been here for 5 years. Previously, I've been with companies like Petronas and with Shell. So what I do is I essentially basically work with my team to make sure that the plant runs optimally, efficiently, using the tools and data available to us. Yeah, I'm happy to be with you here today, and I look forward to a great discussion.
Thank you, Johan. Good to have you. Daniel.
Sure, thanks, Norbert. I'm hearing a little bit of echo. Okay, that's gone. Yeah. All right. Hey, Norbert, and hi, everybody. Pleasure to be here. My name is Daniel. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Detect Technologies Private Limited. We are an India headquartered company. I'm predominantly based there, but currently I'm based in Houston, joining in from the States. What we do is we build AI-based technology supported by patented hardware to revolutionize productivity as well as safety throughout the industrial sector. So currently we're present, of course, with India's headquarters. We're currently present in close to 12 countries and are happy to share our thoughts in the midst of this esteemed panel. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. It's good to see you in the US, knowing that your move has been successful. Dr. Chan, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi. Thanks. I'm Chan from Petronas. Petronas, as some of you may know, is a fully integrated oil and gas company. We operate upstream, midstream, as well as downstream, all the way to retail. So as a company, we operate in more than 30 countries globally. And digital has become indeed a very, very important agenda for us for the past few years. We have ramped up effort in a number of places, and we can spend a bit of time today to talk about some of the digital transformation efforts in the downstream as well as in the safety space. Yeah.
Great, good to have you. Pratap, finally.
Thank you, Norbert. Yeah, I'm with Engineero, a company I founded and been running for the last 20 years. We work with the refineries, petrochemical companies, a lot of it really in the US. And I'm now based in Bombay, but unlike Daniel, I've done the reverse. I used to be based in Houston, and I still spend a lot of time in Houston. Of course, the pandemic has skewed those numbers, but we cater to the petrochemical industry. We've been doing a lot of the data analytics, advanced data analytics, and support to in various fields, reliability, safety, productivity, and so on for these companies. So that's a very brief background about myself and the company.
Thank you. So a really interesting mix of let's say downstream operators and digital service providers. So that promises to be a good conversation. So we have a couple of questions that we're going to discuss one by one, and we'll take those again in no particular order amongst you. So starting off, so clearly from your introductions, now each of you has loads of experience in digitalization in downstream. So I'd really be interested to hear from you an example of a recent project or technology that you have been involved with, and something that really excites you. Linked to that example, so what are, in your view, the key enablers for successfully implementing and scaling up that particular project or technology? So let's start with Petronas. Dr. Chan, could you give us an example of something that really excites you?
Yeah, I'll be glad to share. Over the past few years, my role has been, implementing digital transformation in mostly in the downstream space as well as in the area of safety. Now, in downstream, what I meant is literally the manufacturing sites. Yeah, and the most recent, I'm going to share with you the most recent project or product that we have built with our customer. And when I say customer, essentially they are our operating plants. So I think for the audience who operate plants, one of the I would say one of the goal is always, can I start up the plant or can I operate the plant, as efficiently as possible? And many of us have experienced that different crew would bring slightly different result in starting our plant, right? So how can we capture this tacit knowledge of this very stellar crew and then replicate this experience so that every startup is consistent, so every startup is really top notch, right? So this has been bugging us as well as our plant for some time. So we got together with Malaysia LNG, our LNG facility in Bintulu, Sarawak, and the facility has been operating for 30 years, 30 years or so, right? So how can we capture the tacit knowledge from some of these top-notch operators that we have, right? And then so that the new operators can have a system to advise them and perform as well, if not better. So we started by really talking to the plant operators and looking at the hundreds of millions of data points that we have over the years, right? In the PI historian and so on. And we zoom down to the startup sequence that we really need to so-called capture. And we develop a model. We teach the machine the trends that happen over the past startups. And we also taught the machine, we also get our operators to help coach the machine what to do and what not to do. And eventually we develop a model that is learning, right? The model can now look at the current startup, what is the condition, and then it would advise the current operators what they should do. So we developed a very simple model. It started with a couple of models, and we tested it. We tested it early this year, and it was a success. That was the best startup in, I think, the past 17 years history, right? So it was really amazing. And from then on, we gain a bit more confident, and then we say, hey, can we replicate this to the rest of our trains, right? Malaysia LNG, we have 9 trains built over 3 different generations, I would say. And we started replicating this, and each time the machine learned more and more, and each time for the past few startups have been very, very successful, right? And this is really a strong collaboration between us in the digital fraternity and actual plant operators and engineers at site. Yeah. So this has also gotten attention from the other plants now, other plants within Petronas say, hey, can I have the same? So I think that would be our next chapter, right? We'll probably bring this to the other plants and help them be successful in their startups as well. Yeah.
Fantastic example. So, Dr. Chan, what was the key enabler you think for this? If you think about the success of this,
a lot of people think digital or the key ingredient to digital is data science or software and whatnot. Yes, those are really important, right? And those are requisite skills to do digital. But I think in this particular product or this project, what was really important and I would say quite special is the ways of working. Because we were trying to capture the tacit knowledge of these operators, right? This experience of the operators. We can't just rely on the data set. We look at the data and then we went back to the real people and show them, hey, does this make sense? A lot of conversation with them and we kind of co-created the solution. I think the secret recipe here is that co-creation between the digital fraternity and the actual user or customer, so to speak. That's really the secret sauce to making this happen.
Excellent. Thank you. Daniel, I know that the topic of process safety resonates with you a lot as well. So do you wanna chip in?
No, thanks, Robert. I think we have a lot, and I agree with so much of what Dr. Chan has said from his experience as well. So I'll give you an example of what we have done. So we are an AI company. We incorporated 2016, so we're the new kids in the block. But today we've seen significant amounts of success purely because of, number one, the technology, number two, the timing, and number three, the alignment that is coming in facilities between digital teams as well as the site teams, right? Because you need both of them to be married to ensure that you have a successful rollout. So I'll give you one example. We looked at initially safety, workman safety. Today, in any site, it is impossible for a safety team to be in all parts of the facility at all parts of time, right? So you have incidents. Just yesterday, I was handling a call with one of the biggest facilities in India that had 3 fatalities, right? And this happens. You have LTI, TRCF. Now, for many of the process folks, the question was, how do I keep track of HSE? And not just that, how do I use the same devices to keep track of productivity, right? That ended up being the trick. So what we said was things like cameras or drone-based cameras, fixed cameras, and body cams can be put on site for 24/7 surveillance. And then if you view those cameras, you'll still need upwards of 20 people to have a look at the information coming from all those cameras, right? So we decided about 4 years back that we're going to build an AI engine that can automate detection of all your international categorizations of safety, that's IOGP 577 nomenclature, so that things like work at height, working under a crane, unauthorized entry, all of that is tracked in an automated fashion and in real time. So we had this ready by around 2019. I think we deployed it across several facilities in the Asian market, but the real kicker came when we worked with a facility called Pennsylvania Chemicals, which is actually based in the US and owned by Shell, where we saw alignment between the digital and safety teams. The moment we deployed there, we saw that, number one, the site was identifying 3x to 4x more than what they were initially expecting as observations and violations, which means that much information was lost, right? And then on a daily basis, without pinpointing existing people, they were able to use this technology and collaboratively tweak the platform dashboard so that it is used by both the people on the field, on site, as well as for the management to take higher level calls on where they need to focus on. This marriage really caused a domino effect where we were able to decrease the number of violations in a site to up to about 80% of what we had seen before. And this resulted in us being the first industrial sort of tech company from India that ended up signing off on a global deal with Shell. And currently we're scaling that up with many other facilities like the Exons, the BSFs, looking to work with more. But effectively, if I had to boil it down to what were the enablers for this, right? It comes down to number one, I do believe to a large extent the pandemic has changed the perception towards digital. What was previously a nice to have has now become a must have because you need to send lesser people into facilities. You need to operate these from centralized locations. That's number one. Number two, there have been fundamental shifts in customer expectations. Everyone is understanding that AI can be used productively, like Dr. Chan's example, and I'm sure everyone else in the panel would talk about as well. So the ROI is seen. Until then, there were many failures seen in IoT, many failures seen in deployments and POCs, but now we're seeing massive successes happening among the big logos. So that is point two. And point three is this data can be used for a lot. Like we take information from cameras, the same feed can be used to track the stage of an activity, the hands-on tools time from people, and so on. So it can be leveraged for things like efficiency using a very small infrastructure of cameras. So that's the beauty of digital. That's the centralized feed you would get. And now that teams are centralizing and working closer with facilities and getting the trust of facilities, you will see a rapid boom in the AI adoption across facilities in the Asian market.
Thank you, Daniel. Great success story. Pratap, really looking forward to hear your exciting stories.
Yeah, thank you, Norbert. Yeah, the last decade or so, we've actually been involved with several of our actually past customers in the petrochemical refining space as part of their digitalization initiatives. And so a lot of what we've done is really implement, of course, the AI models and so on are part of it. It's really an end-to-end solution. Addressing things like their reliability, efficiencies, and also information, augmented intelligence going up to, up the chain. So one of the earliest projects we had completed was with a midstream company where, we're well past the pilots and we've actually scaled it to 40 different sites. And they actually recorded 20% improvement in profitability. Of course, we're in various stages with different companies, pilot, some ready to scale. And one very recent example where we've just completed a pilot is with a delayed coker unit. Very interesting thing where, they were facing challenges with just the traditional way of doing things, on really understanding what the outage was in the drum, whether they are having carryovers. So while they have all the measurements, these were some things that they really didn't have a good handle on. So they were operating very conservatively. So if there was some way to improve that. So we took up 6 different use cases, and these were a couple of them. Another very interesting one was improving their furnace run lengths, and then the spall efficiencies and things like that. So these were the kind of use cases that we took up and worked with them. And the pilot actually, I think they were also pleasantly surprised when they actually got about 20 times the return in a very short time. And now we're in the process of scaling to their other delayed cokers. So this is the kind of work we've been doing. Now, in terms of the key enablers that you were talking about, from our experience, one thing has been, like you rightly said, there's a lot of hype on AI, and there's people going around saying that it's plug and play, and you take the data, you plug it in, and voila, you get results. That's far from the truth. Yes, it's very, you can get a lot of insights, but you have to work at it. And there's a lot of value in some of the traditional fundamental models that you have, because that can actually be used as a training assist, for example. It can use to give a boost to this thing. It can be used as constraints and guardrails so that your data-driven models are not all over the place. So we found that to be extremely useful, a key enabler. So artificial intelligence, of course, a lot of people think it's just machine learning, but it's machine learning combined with, a lot of these traditional, whether it's rule-based or fundamental models that you can use in a hybrid way. So that's a key enabler. The second is end-to-end. Models are just one piece. I mean, at the end of the day, you need results coming out. You start with data and it needs to be operating reliably and accurately. So to do that, of course, you have several components. You have, of course, the AI models and so on. You have the data platforms, the business intelligence tools, and then, of course, the workflow and the final implementation. It could be autonomous, whether you directly hook it up to an advanced control or you have a robot doing things, or it could be augmented intelligence, which then can be used by the organic intelligence, if you will, to take it to a next level, the human being. So that's another key, the thing that to look at it end to end. And the third, the last one that I would think is, I think Dr. Chan mentioned that earlier. A lot of people think it's just data science. No, I mean, having a domain specialist involved right from the start to the end is extremely important, because you don't want to use a lot of fancy math to solve the wrong problem. You need to, so the decision intelligence that is required to, set all this up requires, the domain specialist. So someone ideally who has the domain expertise, who can work with the owner operator, and who also has a flair for the analytics computation. So that can ideally kind of close that gap. Otherwise, a lot of the times we've seen it goes this way. I mean, you're talking in very different planes, and so like Dr. Chen mentioned, that's a very key thing for success. We've seen a lot of projects, when we look around in the market, that have, left with a lot to be desired because of some of these gaps. So.
Thank you so much. So it sounds to me like we're moving already away from the hype, right? We're not only talking about fancy AI algorithms anymore. It's not about the technology. It's about integrating it, end-to-end thinking, end users. That's what it's all about. It can be the simplest algorithm whatsoever, as long as it delivers return on investment and value. Johan, over to you.
Yep. Indeed, I think maybe what I'm going to share is similar to what the other panelists have shared. My interest is really about how we use data and turn them into actionable insights. In the manufacturing plants, we have millions of points of data, and there's only so much that we humans can use and analyze and convert into action. So one of the things that we are looking at, or I'm looking at right now, is how we pull that data out and use them for a particular purpose. And Dr. Chan shared an example of how we use it for startup. The one that I'm looking at is how do we look at it for monitoring of trends, monitoring in terms of reliability of the plant, and also in optimization of the plant. We use a lot of traditional spreadsheets and traditional trends. We're using softwares that monitor the plant and so on. So we can see fast-moving trends easily, or big jumps easily. But my interest as well are on slow-moving trends or long-term trends, or slow degenerations. You don't see them over days or weeks. Maybe you need to look at long-term months or years, and you actually see them. So how do we catch those deviations, and how do we trigger when the deviations come to a certain point and require action to be taken to prevent further degradation? So I'm looking at actually several, this is something still ongoing. I'm looking at some options on solutions that are available to translate them into a solution that we can use in the refinery that I'm looking at. From a particular angle of reliability improvement and also in terms of optimization. In particular, I'm keen on long-term trends, degeneration of parameters and so on. I've seen solutions that have worked, and we're looking at replicating that in where I'm looking at right now. And you mentioned about enablers. In my view, I look at data science or tools or solutions as a part. but you need to figure out how to fit that into your way of working, into your business process, into your daily, weekly, monthly cycle. So because there's no point having a fabulous tool, but you don't have a way to translate value out of the tool. So I've seen multiple solutions in the past, digitalization or not, fail because of that vital link between the tool and solution to the human that translates that into value. So I think integrating the tool and solution into the ways of working, to me, is the key enabler. And when I look at the opportunity that I said earlier, I'm trying to make sure that we think about that from the start, so that we tailor the solution to the ways of working that we feel will work for us.
Great, thank you, Johan. So some really good examples, I think, for the audience, and some really good lessons about key enablers and what to take into account when you want to be successful in implementing AI or digital tools. So let's move on to the topic of sustainability and energy transition. So what we'd like to discuss is how can digital tools, digitalization, AI support sustainability? And I'm really interested to hear some real examples of where that is already happening, and also your views on what can or should be expected in the next few years as this topic gains more and more importance and more speed in various regions around the world. Pratap, would you take a first stab at this one?
Sure. Yes, that's today a lot of people are talking about sustainability, and rightly so, because I mean it's something that we all need to be thinking about. Now, when I look at sustainability, I call it actionable sustainability. I would see three areas. I mean, one is take care of your immediate assets. What can you do with your immediate assets to further the sustainability? So that's the first thing. I mean, whatever assets you have, how do you through optimization, feedstock, improved energy, and so on. So that's the first step. So that can address this thing. And there, in a lot of our digitalization projects today, we have started seeing KPIs, like carbon intensity, key focus areas where you want to absolutely reduce waste or reduce water consumption, and the emissions and so on the greenhouse gases and so on come in. So that digitalization and use of advanced analytics for ongoing operations directly addresses it, and we've seen that come into a lot of our recent projects. The other two, the second part of actionable sustainability is projects. Just like you had earlier, you had projects like debottlenecking projects, small capex projects. Well, there are small projects that could be done to improve your sustainability. And there where digitalization helps is, there are digitalization tools that we've also used to improve the whole design engineering and getting to a better process faster. So that's the second area of sustainability, where again, digitalization plays a role. And the third area is much more long-term, which I know Dr. Chan and Johan and all would be well aware of. Looking what is 2030 plus, what changes do we make, what investments do we really need to make, thinking real long-term, where you're actually changing the type of products that are coming in, or complete change in feedstock, or change the usage of your utilities or hydrogen and whatever. So that's slightly longer term. And again, the digitalization help is really improving the whole process of getting to a innovative process faster. Of course, where digitalization can help in all this is, oftentimes people say that sustainability and profitability don't go hand in hand, but they are really, not mutually exclusive. If it's thought through properly, and that's where digitalization can help, you can actually align them, improve your profitability while improving sustainability as well. So these are some of the things, that we have seen, and that's, what I thought I'd share here on this topic.
Thank you, Pratap. I think it's fantastic to see now working in digitalization, and you start seeing merging with sustainability, and indeed seeing the trade-offs that our companies are making between profitability, safety, sustainability, which could be giving tensions, but even more interesting to apply some real digital tools to these. Keen to hear the operator's perspective. Johan, do you want to give a bit of perspective from your side?
Yeah. I'm very passionate about energy optimization, energy reduction. I mean, it's not really energy transition, but driving down energy usage brings down our carbon footprint. I think that's a good place to start. And I believe that we do well as operators to monitor particular units, particular parts of the plant, because that's how we are organized in the plant, by area, by units. But there is a whole lot of opportunity when you look at the plant as an integrated unit, and I think that is where there is still a lot of opportunity, at least from where I see. And a lot of effort that we've been doing is how do we get data and analytics out of this data to a form that people can see the integrated view of the plant from an energy perspective that allows people to action on them. So for example, fuel balance across the refinery, steam balance across the refinery, but not only data, but data that can be actioned upon. So actually, we have put certain data available already in place, and we even translate that into, in our case, into a monetary figures so that it's real to people. Now we're working on going further to go deeper into analytics. I think we are perhaps still some way to go. But my emphasis now is really about cross area or cross unit or integrated view. And to me, analytics and data is the key enabler to get there. Because the traditional way of doing things it's not fast enough. And there's still a lot of opportunity there when you look at it overall integrated.
Thank you. On a more holistic view of how the plant is performing in various aspects. Dr. Chan, how's Petronas looking at sustainability and merging that with digitalization?
So very much like the examples that Pratap has spoken and Johan has spoken, right? A lot of our digital initiatives, right, or the pain point that we solve, 2-3 years ago, we were already solving the problem with how can I make my energy more efficient, right? How can I reduce, consumption of fuel and still produce the same, right? Now, of course, at that time, we didn't label it as a sustainability-driven project, but the essence is truly fuel reduction. And with fuel reduction, you reduce carbon emission. Just even like the project I mentioned earlier, with a more efficient startup, it has proven that we reduce the startup time by certain hours and therefore reducing flaring and therefore reducing carbon emission. But I guess we have never labeled it as this is a sustainability AI project, something like that. Not yet, right? Now, sustainability is now formally a very important goal for Petronas. Our president has made it our company's agenda, right? Net carbon zero by 2050. Now, I think there's a lot of opportunity. In a sense, like similar to what Johan has mentioned, integrating the whole plant. But if I share a perspective of a value chain, today we have solutions. To optimize our production, right? From wellhead to customers, right? All we really needed to do is to put a carbon equation in it. What is the carbon pricing of the different options? Just that today we haven't come to that formula. So what I'm trying to say is that we already have the necessary building blocks to actually make that happen. Now, that is on one angle. But as we do digital transformation, one of our core trust is also going to cloud. Prior to this, we have our on-prem on-prem servers and whatnot, but we are migrating to cloud. And initial results have, we are just beginning, right? But the initial results, we have seen a net reduction of carbon footprint as well, right? And of course, if we work with providers who themselves are committed to become carbon neutral, that's much more the better, right? So that is another aspect, not just looking at the AI stuff, but moving things to cloud, and that whole improvement in efficiency will drive it. So I think digital has already indirectly contributed to sustainability, but it will feature more prominently in our agenda in the next next 1-2 years, I guess. Yeah. Now, sustainability as well, I think we can look at it from the angle of uh, human capability, right? So I think we in Petronas we also pay a lot of attention to retooling our talents, right? The engineers, how do we retool them with digital skill sets? So what we have done over the past 2 years is that we curated what we call the citizen analytics program, where we literally train plant engineers, accountants, finance folks, even HR people who have very limited understanding in analytics, but we actually retool them with low code, no code type of tools. Today, they can literally build a dashboard by themselves. Today, some of them are using machine learning algorithms to solve some of their problems. So it will make the transformation very sustainable, right? Rather than just relying on a small group of data scientists that we have, but we democratize this to everybody and making it sustainable in that sense as well. Yeah.
Great. Yeah, it's just like with safety, right? So digital and sustainable is just good business. It's not a
Yes.
separate initiative. It shouldn't be a separate initiative. It's just doing good
Yes.
business. Daniel, I know that Detect is doing an awful lot with your tools in supporting sustainability, emissions, etc., etc. So if you have a few examples, that would be great.
Sure, I'll cover a few examples, but largely couldn't agree more with the rest of the panel. It's just with respect to ESG, there's a huge push towards it. There's a huge practice, but as Dr. Chan was mentioning, the contours are not known. There are many technologies that are deployed, right? They are deployed for the purpose of improved productivity, improved safety. At the end of the day, it does reduce your carbon emission, but they're not positioned as technologies for carbon emission. So right now, as Pratap was mentioning as well, I think the KPIs are changing across organizations to ensure that this becomes a larger feature in every project that is taken up. A couple of examples from our side, we see this active in folks like Bukom, Jurong, as well as Indonesia, where we're working, where let's take flare emissions, right? Today, if you look at your flaring at a site, you have a view from, let's say, a camera, and I think there are folks looking at that information 24/7. Every flare in the world is monitored manually by separate folks. Now, the moment excess flaring happens or the color of the flare changes, many times it is missed out by personnel. Again, places like here, you have AI that is capable of detecting the boundary limits or the boundary conditions beyond which, if there's excessive flaring, it alerts the folks so that you'll be the process engineers, the ops folks, that so that process related decisions can be taken to decrease the amount of flaring overall. But this is also has to be supported by substantial amounts of change management, right? Because they're used to a certain form of working from the technology input, and that's the journey that many of the facilities are making right now. Similarly to what we've seen in safety as well as asset reliability. For example, in safety, we've seen things like authorized entry is now being automated in facilities all over the world, but the process of documentation of entering, exit, and the previous forms, there has to be a change completely in organizations so that they don't have to put the people on the man watch. The people and managers can be brought back. I think those journeys are long journeys that we're taking and have to be done at the start of certain projects or certain initiatives when it is taken up. Additionally, we've seen there's a lot of work happening in things like hydrogen optimization to decrease the amount of utilization or consumption of hydrogen. Similarly, data to accumulate things like emission monitoring or the percentage of emissions going out. There's a lot of sensors being built. There's a lot of AI. I think we are early on in the journey globally on this. There's a mandate all over the world to ensure that this is treated in a very important fashion. And we will see a lot of changes over the next 2 to 3 years on the adoption of these technologies.
And again, it comes down to these ways of working, yeah? and embedding it in processes and in people's hearts and minds. so many parallels indeed with safety, but also with digital and other topics.
Exactly.
So time's flying. That's what you get when you put a couple of experts together and allow them to talk about the things that they like. So final question. So the topic of this panel is about the future of downstream. What will AI change in the next 5 years? So I'd like to hear your vision about the downstream industry and beyond 5 years from now in terms of organizations, work processes, tools, of course, focused on digitalization. And just to get your kind of short answer on whether you're optimistic about the future or more cautious about it. Maybe try to stick to it about 1 minute, 1.5 minutes per each of you. Jon, you wanna start?
Yep, I'm actually optimistic, Robert. Though I believe we can move faster, compared to many other industries, that we can move faster. But I'm optimistic. I do feel, however, that the COVID-19 situation for some organizations, they see that as a problem because resources and so on is hampered. But I do feel that organizations need to look at it as an opportunity, because this crisis demands on us to do better. And I think digitalization is a way that can help us do better, and I think we should embrace it and move ahead better. So I'm optimistic. I think there's a lot more to be done, and I do think as an industry we can move faster. That's my take on it.
Thank you. Daniel, your views, optimism or more kind of cautious?
You're asking the wrong guy. I would say we're putting a substantial effort, incredibly optimistic. I think there are four, just to summarize, right? There are four things. There's data acquisition on a side, data analysis, and then strategy around that information and execution, right? 5 to 6 years in, we will be driving towards larger efficiency. AI machines don't get tired, they are more accurate. But that has to be a collaborative journey with facilities to ensure at each step of the way those changes are made. We see the industry going to a place where data acquisition and data analysis should be fully automated at a point of time. Of course, with the supervision of humans and experts, right? But most of the effort and efficiency should be going into strategy and execution so that you can run much more efficient sites. We see the future going there. Even execution, who knows? There's so much robotics being built out. Currently, we have drones that can go in contact with structures and take ultrasonic thickness measurements. That's still data acquisition and analysis. But tomorrow, you might see technologies that will be able to do the painting, do a lot of the manual activities as well. So we're incredibly optimistic on where this journey is going towards.
Great, thank you. Pratap.
Yeah, I think you asked this question to a team. By default, you're going to get everyone's optimistic, as am I, extremely optimistic. Yes, of course. I mean, really what's going to happen, I think there's going to be more of a drive to being data-driven. Over time, as these tools and techniques are better utilized and so on. Of course, there's going to be a change in organization and work processes, which I think the pandemic really kind of gave it a faster fillip, if you will, in that there'll be a greater utilization of what I call Internet of People. So a person can be anywhere geographically. So you don't need the expert to go to the data. The data can go to the expert. So, and that, I think with the collaborative tools and, IoT and so on, that you're going to see more and more. Where you are really doesn't matter. And so you have what I call the global brain for, any operation. Of course, over time, in terms of teams, there's going to be a slimming and shifting, because people will have to kind of get upskilled or reskilled, if you will, and move to do less rote tasks and higher value added tasks. The rote tasks can be more and more taken care of by the AI tools and the digitalization and so on. And of course, there will be a digital divide that's going to happen over time between organizations as well as maybe within the workforce as well, which has to be cautiously managed. I mean, that's kind of some of the points that I could think of. but extremely optimistic.
Very good, very good. Dr. Chan, closing remarks from you.
Yeah, I would echo the rest of the panel as well, right? And over the past few years, I think we, as an industry, we have got over the initial skepticism about digitalization, right? Initially, people were quite skeptical, and initially, people are talking about, oh, AI is going to take over my job and things like that. I think we have gotten over that harm, and now people are kind of excited. So the question next is that when everybody is excited, where do we focus? And how do we at the same time also enable the rest of the organization to do more of such things by themselves, but in a safe and guided manner, right? So I think for us, we will definitely accelerate the journey into digital, right? In fact, as much as possible, we want to democratize. We have already taken the first few steps of doing it, but democratizing this new digital skill set to the rest of the employees in Petronas, the 48,000 of us, and pushing or transforming Petronas into a truly digitally enabled organization.
Thank you very much for an interesting discussion. I've learned a lot. I hope the audience learned a lot. So thank you for listening. Thank you for joining us on the panel, and hope to see you next year in Singapore with some chicken rice.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Norbert, and thanks. I'm very happy to be part of such a great panel.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.